Information about the world of running, inspiration to fuel passion and excellence, and ideas for making connections and finding community. You're listening to A to Z Running. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the A to Z Running Podcast, where we help runners thrive. I'm Andy.
And I am Zach, and as promised, we will continue the discussion about social influences on runners, this time by breaking down how runners interact with social media, and you might say how social media interacts with runners, featuring reflections from guests and audience members as well. And stick around after that for the latest from the world of running, including a plethora of new records and amazing performances all around. And naturally, before you do anything else, so that you get all of this good information, plus the stuff that you
Are you trying to get them FOMO? We're going to talk about that later. Fear of missing out? Yeah.
No, you shouldn't be afraid of missing out. You should be afraid of being uninformed.
Oh.
Well, anyway, you need to go to
No
A to Z
fear,
Running,
folks.
go to AtoZrunning.com and look for the word follow, because that's how you can be fully subscribed to get all of the good information, like the articles that we post that you wouldn't hear on air.
In fact, this week on the A to Z Running Podcast, we're going to be discussing this social media topic. I'm also writing an article. I've already written it, and there's a lot of research that I put in there that you'll want to refer to because it's fascinating stuff.
Indeed.
Yeah. And this week, one of our featured comments from a listener, Rob, said, I could go on and on about what creates a thriving family. And this was on the topic of how to thrive in marriage and in families. And he gave us these 3 suggestions. First, prioritizing your life together. And he said, for us, it has been God, family, work, and everything else. If something that is a lower priority scale is negatively influencing something higher, then things must change.
Good insight.
And then number 2, honest communication and the ability to communicate important issues when both are ready. For instance, do not talk to me about anything right after work.
Well, that explains
Zach
why we
feels
have
that way.
problems. Except mine is don't talk to me about anything ever.
Oh.
And it's not a great communication strategy.
It's
I've
not.
learned.
No. And then thirdly, unconditional love to everyone in the family. We might fight, disagree, etc., but at the end of the day, we are all here for one another. That
Very
sums up
nice.
my beliefs. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Rob.
That was deep.
And very convicting.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, at least.
Well, we appreciate all that kind of feedback and more that you give us on all the social media platforms.
Well, if that isn't a great way to at least introduce a positive potential of social media,
Yeah.
we've got plenty more for you in store. So let's get started.
Today, our main topic is how social media affects runners. There are benefits, such as community,
Really?
but there's also negative effects of social media. And in this episode, we're not going to tell you whether or not to use it or even how to use it.
I might.
We will have some great feedback from research, as well as some articles that we will refer to and some insights from guests. Now, there are 2 distinct categories of social media we want to explore: training-based social media and all other kinds of community-based social media. So we're going to examine all of this and the dangers and the benefits alike. And our contributions today are from Coach Patty Dillon, Kendra Chambers, Ann of Margs and Marathon, and Coffee Posse host Jamal Davis.
Coffee Posse. Well, maybe we should start the reflection here with a little bit of context around how, first of all, how vast the concept, and as well, how dynamic the reflection. So first, Andy, give us the stats, because you did a little bit of, actually,
I did a
lot
of research.
A lot of bit of research.
Yeah, so estimated 2.5 billion users of social media, and that's as of 2020. And Strava has an estimated 76 million users as of January 2022.
That's like all the runners in the world. Actually,
and
there are more
cyclists
cyclists than runners on Strava, but we'll change that eventually.
And Fitbit, which I didn't even realize had that much of a prevalence still. I guess I shouldn't have said that because probably a lot of you use Fitbit. I just have never used it.
The reason we don't know that is we have no use of Fitbit ever. So who knows?
31 million users as of 2020. So there's probably a lot more now that it's 2022. And I couldn't find any information about Garmin Connect users. I did search.
I'm guessing that that's on purpose.
Oh, yeah.
Garmin Connect is not quite as easily public as these other things, which clearly is intentional.
Now, I want to give you an overview. A lot of what we're going to talk about today really could be useful to anyone who uses social media, but we are going to make specific references to running. And so on the broad scale, studies have been done to understand the effect on the brain that social media has. And it's been suggested that it potentially is more addictive than cigarettes or alcohol.
And that's probably not surprising to anyone listening. Because we as humans, but more specifically our brains, can get addicted to anything because it has everything to do with what the thing does to our brain or how we interact with it, and what it does to our brain. So, for instance, we've talked about like the obligatory runner who could potentially be addicted to exercise. Like you can get addicted to anything. So that doesn't make the thing bad, but it raises questions about how we should be interacting or deliberately considering our interactions with such a thing. So if I may, that being the case, one more contextualizing reflection comes from Jaron Lanier's book. And this is, I should mention, somewhat controversial in the sense that he has very, very strong opinions, and not everybody agrees with his very strong opinions, and that's okay. But he presents some interesting information, and that's where we'll focus our attention. But his book is entitled 10 Arguments for Deleting Your Social Media Accounts Right Now.
Okay, that puts me on the defense right away.
Yes, and it should. It should raise skepticism. Anytime someone presents like, I am going to give you absolute proof that you need to do something behaviorally, you should immediately be skeptical because, who knows exactly what the perspectives of the person are or the intents and such. So, and he's very straightforward with his opinions. He's not like trying to hide anything. He's just saying, this is what I think because of all these things. But I should mention that this may not be terribly unfamiliar to some because his book and a lot of his work was also featured in Netflix's The Social Dilemma, which I have not seen, but I know many others have. And so if that's familiar, or at least some of the ideas are familiar as we're discussing some things, that could be a connection for you. The main thing is he's talking in this book specifically about why social media, and not just social media, but similar types of technologies, why they are often identified as dangerous. And his whole point revolves around the idea of the business model behind what they do in terms of trying to operate. And I'm going to summarize that here in one quote from the book, and then we'll move on to like our specifics. But the core process, he writes, that allows social media to make money and that also does the damage to society is behavior modification.
Yeah, it manipulates our behavior.
The motivation of some of these technologies is behavior modification. So now he's going to suggest that is wrong, or at least that's the core of what is wrong that happens. So we'll come to that in a little bit. But that being the case, we want to reflect on as we consider these things. If I know that there are potential risks, that's our contextualizing comment here, there are potential risks in these kinds of things. The question then becomes, how might I interact with them to better myself and others while avoiding such risks? And we have got some great information thanks to Andy for so much research she's done. So let's dive into them categorically. First category, Andy, is physical health.
Yes. Now, although this hasn't been directly studied with runners, we do know these things. So sleep is crucial for all humans, but especially runners in training. Proper sleep increases power, endurance, proprioception, and cognitive function. Poor sleep hygiene, which doesn't mean dirty, it means that you're not sleeping well due to disturbances, has been associated with higher perceived effort, decreased muscle glycogen concentration, reduced submaximal strength, time to exhaustion, among other physical effects. So cognitive effects include decreased psychomotor functions, mood, and vigor.
Vigor. That's a very precise term.
Yeah, this was from International J Sports Medicine study in 2019.
Journal of
So
Sports
that
Medicine. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Journal of Sports
2019
Medicine.
study.
Yeah, that's what the J stands for,
Yes.
journal.
Yep.
Thanks for that. So how does social media affect our sleep? Now that we know this, right, that sleep is vitally important. And I think many runners would agree that that's something we try to strive for, but it's hard as busy adult runners. But research shows that nighttime use of social media engagement is causing poor sleep hygiene. The term used among the research we reviewed is FOMO, fear of missing out. Although I don't think it resonates with a lot of us, the fear of missing out, because we're not worried about missing out, but I think it's more like the notifications, the messaging, new content, and then all that instant gratification from social media. It's designed to entice us. And it contributes to FOMO. And then CSMU, that might be a new term for you, that stands for compulsive social media use. For many working adults and students, scrolling has interfered with bedtime.
Yeah, quite clearly.
Yeah.
So you can do this because, many people do. If you want to study the truth of this for yourself, it's one of these very simple things. Give yourself a week of absolutely no social media use or interaction. Like that there's no way you can be notified. There's no way it can be on your radar. And then judge how you slept. But you have to take away the first couple of days. Because chances are, if you're a heavy social media user, the first couple of days you're going to be experiencing a kind of withdrawal type scenario. But after those first couple of days, see how you sleep. And then ask yourself the simple question, if it's significantly different, what might I do to change my interactions so that that's not happening to me anymore? If it's not, then you have a very clear judge of it's not affecting my sleep over much. That's great. Either way, it's a good thing to try.
Yeah. So another way that it affects ourselves physically is that it rounds our shoulders, we hunch more, and also contributes to decreased effectiveness of our respiratory function, which I think we can agree are vital for runners. So our posture, right? Our posture and our respiratory function are very significant to our sport. And people who use smartphones for prolonged durations had these issues. So I know for me personally, I'm having serious issues. And it's not just from social media. It's not just from looking at my phone. It's also from the computer. And, it's kind of become a cyclical thing for me where I get up in the morning and I'm hunching. I'm working on my computer first. I'm not doing, the great morning routine that I've set out for myself. Instead, I am first hunching. And I'm starting my day in both a negative posture, because we know that posture does affect our mood. We've discussed that before on this show, but also physically, it's disrupting our body's ability to maintain good posture and our normalcy of good posture.
So we could probably just simply comment that naturally that dynamic is just present in all kinds of sustained tech use,
that's
specifically
not
with
just,
the phone.
Yeah, it's not just social media.
Right. And so good physical behaviors around things like our technology uses starts with just being very privy to the fact that it doesn't really matter how much I think I have good command of things like this. Very few of us are physically cognizant when we're on a device for any kind of purpose. And so as a consequence, I'm most likely doing it. It's not a question of whether I'm doing it, the hunching and some of those kinds of things. So then I have to look at, what are simple ways to avoid that. And certainly the easiest is to just avoid prolonged periods of time looking at the device. If you're in the habit of 30 minutes of scrolling in the evening or something of that nature, or in the morning, that's 30 minutes of sustained bad posture, most likely. So things like that.
So those are a couple of the ways that it negatively affects. And something that I wanted to give on the flip side, though, is that many people are motivated to get out the door because they see their friends getting out the door via social media. So sometimes that can be a benefit to your physical health, or you're finding some routines or help, coaching type things like from people like us who say, hey, Adam Homolka says to do this. So there are some physical benefits to social media if you do implement them.
could be. So how about mental health effects, which is perhaps in so many ways the area that has been the most scrutinized.
Yes.
And for good reason. So let's consider those things.
Due to the underlying intention of social media's design to draw us in and foster psychological cravings, it can be easy for that to make our mental health worse. And things that maybe we already struggle with, for instance, my anxiety and some of my seasonal affective disorder, can be made worse through social media. According to Help Guide, which is a resource for mental health, social media has become this is a completely, sorry, I'm moving on to the next point. Social media has become a security blanket for individuals. So compulsively turning to social media to avoid real life interaction or situations does not help people deal with their issues, but only postpone them and often worsen the problem they're having in real life. So I've seen that before, and my compulsive behavior has brought me away from the people that I'm with too. So I'm going to be the first one to admit that my social media has gotten in the way of relationships, and I have withdrawn on my phone when I'm uncomfortable.
I'll be the second one to admit that Andy's social media behaviors have caused her withdraw. But
you never do that? Not in your Strava? You never look at your Strava when you want to...
I am joking, Andy. But I do. My habits are simply in different types of technologies than not necessarily because I'm not on social media except for Strava. But we will be talking about that in precision here in a bit. But that's a key point where, once again, the barometer is a very difficult thing to... there's so many things present in a person's life that are affecting. And so when we try to identify what is a cause for concern, it's very hard to be able to say this clearly is the cause for concern. Where we aspire toward improvement as people is not where we find the problem. It's when we find things that are presenting some negative stimulus to some degree, and we minimize those things. And so in this instance, it's a simple question of, is it? So if you're on social media a fair bit, it is definitely presenting itself as this kind of thing, as a potential like security safety blanket, a potential validation and affirmation outside of our normal, human circles that we're interacting with. So it can be those things. So then we simply have to seek out whether it is and to what degree.
So if you're someone who's using social media and you're using it to manage your moods, for instance, like you're feeling sad or you're feeling tired and you are scrolling, and that's kind of like the compulsive behavior to affect your mood, that can actually, at first you might have a little burst of like a little boost in your mood, but then it can actually turn negatively.
Maybe you could just call it a high.
A little high. Yeah. And Help Guide writes this too. Using social media more often, though, increases your fear of missing out and feelings of inadequacy, dissatisfaction, and isolation. In turn, these things then, negatively affect your mood and worsen symptoms of depression, anxiety, and stress. So it's kind of like a downward spiral, because then after that, then you like try to feed that boost again. So you find ways on social media to feed the boost, whether that's posting or commenting or sharing that makes you feel, or you get a reaction from someone that makes you feel good, or maybe not good. Maybe you're looking to get a negative reaction that also gives you a little bit of a high. I don't know. But unmanaged, all of this, there's a negative state of mental health that will continue within the context of social media addictions. So I want to thank all of you, I shouldn't say all of you, many of you, for participating in our A to Z running survey that I did on Instagram that was about social media. And thank you for also kind of admitting some hard things to admit, that some of you, I'm one, compare themselves to others in their training with activity-based social platforms. That's like Garmin Connect or Strava. So many people are comparing themselves, and these comparisons can motivate you in some ways, but you remember, everybody is creating their reality on these social platforms. So
crafting the image they want the world to see.
So there's been a bunch of studies that have shown that people will excuse, justify, exaggerate, or apologize as necessary in order to protect self-esteem and verify concepts. And this is really powerful because I mean, we all do that to some extent because we are crafting our person on social media. It's inevitable because people can't really see us in person. So what do we do? How do we explain ourselves? How do we explore the internet in our person, our avatar, so to speak, that we've created? Some are as authentic as we can hope to be, but in the same way, we're still explaining the negative aspects. It's just human nature. So,
or explaining the positive aspects in a way that make them sound even better.
Right. And so when I had asked about modifying workouts for social media or for Strava or Garmin Connect or whatever, I mean, many of you admitted that you've done that. And I have done that. It's been a while, but I remember doing less steady state duration because I wanted to run it faster, because I wanted to
show that average pace.
I wanted my average pace to be higher. So instead of slowing down my effort, reducing my effort to the appropriate level and doing the full duration, I exceeded the effort, did less of a duration, and didn't get the best benefit of my workout because I was being vain. I wanted people to see a higher or a faster pace.
Okay, here's one. Quick straw poll, live poll, except we don't know what you're going to think. But why? And if so, well, no, why? Why, if you do you record your warm-up and cool-down as separate entries from the workout itself? Now, there's a number of reasons, legitimately, why people do that. Many do it because it's like, I did a warm-up and then I stopped, did something like changed shoes or, did some drills or something, and then ran my workout, stopped, did other things, and then did my cool down. And rather than just stop the watch or pause it, you shut it down and started a new workout. Okay. So that I see that all over the place on Strava. And I always wonder about it because in my mind, it's wouldn't it just be easier, logistically easier to just leave the watch in recording mode, just pause it and then start for the next thing and then pause it and start for the next thing and then end the whole thing and have a single entry that you can just provide a couple of details where you don't have to edit 4 different entries. I always wonder about that, right? So here's the quick straw poll. If you are doing that because you like what people see when they see the workout stand alone without the warm-up and cool-down, that is an example of this phenomenon we're describing, where you are doctoring your presentation of yourself for the sake of what other people see.
Now, I'm not suggesting, untrue.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting it's untrue or even that it's bad. I'm simply saying that's an example of the point. So then the question becomes, and this is the important reflection with it, is, am I doing that because I want people to think better of me because of the nature of what they see there, or am I doing it because it's just an easier, I'm facilitating something in a way that's more effective? It's an important reflection.
And just remember, when we're seeing everyone's stuff, and I've heard this, and I think it's great, I'm going to say it again, that people show their best self on social media, and that includes the training stuff too. There is likely a lot that you're not seeing on that, and a lot of disappointment that isn't being shared. So as soon as you think that you're the only one that's struggling, just remember that you're not. That's my little pep talk in the middle of this. And so all of this, I wanted to come back to some more research. So confidence is crucial to performance. So in this conversation, we're talking about comparing, and that can often decrease your confidence and your self-esteem and the way you view yourself among others. One study concluded that an individual's personal standards was more useful, and downward spirals came with social comparisons. So if somebody just looked at their own training and saw their own progress, that they had more useful information and they continued to progress. Now, some, and I'm not saying all, but some had a downward spiral with the social comparisons. So, and then they also concluded in this research that higher self-esteem was associated with better athletic performance.
No doubt.
And unavoidably, social media presents with social comparisons. So now let's hear from previous podcast guest, as promised, Coach Patty Dillon. And she'll give us some warnings that she's given to her athletes about using social media in their training. Let's hear from Patty.
Doing it online, I understand the other part of it. It makes the person accountable. They kind of they feel good about themselves and they want to put it out there. Hey, look what I did. I understand that. I was telling my husband, I said, if I did a good workout, I would call somebody on the phone, somebody that I knew, and I'd say, hey, I did a 5:04 last mile. Oh my God. And they would go, really? I said, yeah, can you believe it? And it was raining. But I knew in my heart, I never heard, they never spread it or anything. Not that it didn't even enter my mind that anybody would go anywhere. But I would tell somebody because I had to tell somebody. And I think the internet, we have become so acquainted with this little machine that we're intimate with it and that it's our friend. Well, it's really not. It's really not. Sometimes you can't translate it. And then you've already opened yourself up to criticism and judgment. And if you can't translate it, you feel like a failure. And I do not want my athletes to feel like a failure. Oh, that is far from. I want them to feel capable and strong and stick-it-to-iveness and go get it, and then if they don't reach it, they feel okay. And they go, I'll get it next time. I did this instead. And it's like, yes, because you're developing, you're developing the whole of the person. I started running. I didn't know how much work I had to do. And, not physically, the mental part. But I grew and, you become better, become more confident, self-assured, and you take chances in other things in your life, which I did do. So it was good. It was good. And I hope my athletes do the same. I tell people, you own this. It's yours.
Well, thank you to Coach Patty for her insights. And certainly when from the coach's perspective and how they're working with their own athletes in particular, it's important to have clarity around these kinds of things. Not everybody responds to that differently. I know in particular one coach that I've talked with wants to have his athletes on a certain platform because it's the easiest way for them to be able to, because they don't like live in the same area.
Are you talking about yourself in third person?
No, I'm not. But wants to have his athletes on a certain platform because it's an easy way to facilitate some of the stuff that they're doing because they don't see each other or know each other. Yeah. Now, naturally, we feel the same way about Strava in some senses as well. But
so this is what I've personally done because I know myself enough to realize that I do struggle with comparison sometimes. And then, like I mentioned earlier, I can unhealthily make bad decisions in my training, modifying to serve the appearance rather than serve my training and my fitness. So some things that I do, a couple of things. One, I'm private on Strava. And another thing is that I will put general things on there. I'm not putting all the details of my workouts. So usually I'll just manually post. And sometimes I have details, it just depends on how I'm doing, but like emotionally and mentally. And so anyway, I'm just putting that out there as a recommendation, perhaps for some of you who also struggle, to just upload a manual input that says like 7 miles, 8-minute pace, and that's all. And have another place that you put more of the details.
We talked about this once and we thought, how great would it be if Strava just said, like maybe the duration and the effort that you did. So it's like, I ran 60 minutes easy and that's it. Now, then it begs the question, well, okay, so now the duration's there and then people are going to be like, oh, you ran 60. I'm going to run 72.
Yeah, then it will be like
so maybe
volume would become the king.
Although that's not the worst thing.
I did love that Patty said in her snippet there that she called a friend after she had a really good workout. And I just thought about that because I'm like, what are we wanting sometimes? We want someone to be like, hey, awesome job, which I have found a lot of encouragement via Strava, from people that I am connected to, that I do know the people in person. So that is a little different than some of my other platforms. But to call someone, I think I'm going to do that next time. I'm going to call someone. And just tell them about my workout instead of having my need for that connection be via social, that I talk to someone. And it might be someone who actually comments on my Strava very often. I mean, it's just like, that might be the person that I'm calling, but just having that extra personal connection rather than having it be through a screen.
I think I'm going to do that too. And then it'll give me an opportunity to directly say, in your face, I smoked you in that workout. Smoked you.
We're all shaking our heads at Zach. He's not
Good.
actually that. Well, you are pretty competitive.
That might be. It's possible that's very
He's not
authentic.
that mean.
So let's consider some more benefits. We've been
Yes.
talking about a lot of the risks and dangers. Certainly that is not the only consideration, but are there, Andy, any benefits?
We have connected.
Are there really?
Yes, we've connected with so many of you that I've actually gotten to know through social media platforms. And 98% of those of you who responded to our survey said that you've been inspired in your own training through social media. So it's been positively benefiting you. And social media connections may also know how to give support in tough times that are kind of different than maybe some people in your own life who don't really understand training. And when you connect on social media through interests and you find one another because you're going to run the same marathon, or, you just connect because of running, they can more easily help you through some of those things like injuries and success and defeat. So the support of the running community online can be really meaningful. Now, 94% of all of you who responded to our survey indicate that you learn from social media, and that's obviously a beneficial thing. Coaches like us, physical therapists, physiologists, sports professional athletes, they may help you in your training, like actually help you. Although I should caution that there is a lot of bad information online.
And here we go.
So, but I'm saying,
would you say misinformation or disinformation?
But I mean, and then you can look for those positive stuff. There might be some things that you're seeing that don't make you feel less confident. Well, what about finding some things you can learn that make you feel more confident? So maybe those are the kinds of platforms that you would want to look for. And then social media can also be an outlet for creativity and self-expression. There are many benefits of articulating your training and what you're learning and your experiences, like just writing that out and putting it in a way that you are sharing and really being authentic online is very valuable. And social media can be a place to exercise that ability to digest what's going on in your life. Those are a few benefits of social media. Now, let's hear from Jamal Davis first. He's the founder and host of Coffee Posse, and then following him, we'll be listening to Anne of Margs and Marathons. She's a previous guest on our show too, and she is a pro athlete and social media influencer.
The Instagram community has been super amazing in helping me focus on and achieve a lot of goals that I set that are athletics related. And it's been amazing joining into the broad community, but it also feeling really small at the same time. There are so many positive people, helpful tips that really help motivate and inspire me to do more when I'm looking to achieve my goals. And that has been super helpful. Now, obviously, social media is sometimes on the negative side because you can look at it and say, oh, I'm not achieving this goal, or I'm not doing this workout, and this person's so much faster, or doing X, Y, Z. So that sometimes can be hard, especially when you're not having good workouts or even a good training season. So, ways that I look at social media is there's so many benefits to it, and I think it's a great positive community to be a part of, but also just be cognizant when I'm comparing myself to others or getting wrapped into the details or just looking at everything else that could be done. So that can sometimes be a hindrance. One of the things that I do with social media is just make sure that, the amount of time you spend on it, or if you get into the comparison trap, just being mindful of that so that it doesn't negatively impact me. All right.
Hey, Andy and Zach. It's Anne from Margs and Marathons. Thanks for asking me to share about this topic of Instagram and using social media to share about training. When I first started my Instagram account, I didn't realize there was a big kind of social media endurance community, and at first I loved it. I was, so inspired by seeing other people do the, same type of training as I was doing, or even bigger training and reaching for bigger goals than I had even thought of before. And it was really inspiring and motivating to me because in my real life, I don't have a big running community that I get inspired by. So it was fun to kind of have that through social media. And I do think it really advanced my running because I saw other moms and women who were working and people like me who were chasing big dreams and goals and times, and it made me think, okay, if she can do it, why not me? And so in that way, I think it was really good and really inspiring. But I do think the other side of that is you can get caught up in thinking, oh, well, that person ran 100 miles, and she had an amazing marathon time. So if I do that, then I'm going to have an amazing marathon time, and get kind of caught up in trying to do someone else's training when you really need to listen to your body and what you need to do and focus on your training. And I am a running science endurance nerd. I love to watch other people's trainings and observe how people can go about training for a marathon, for example, in so many different ways and get to the similar result. I think we saw that when so many women were going after the OTQ standard in 2020, and they went about it so many different ways. So when I'm being objective, I can enjoy social media and look at it that way, just kind of as an interesting, motivating social experiment. But I, like anyone else, sometimes get caught up in the comparison trap. So to kind of help set boundaries for myself to make sure that social media stays a fun and motivating place and not a place of stress or pressure. A few things that I did, and these are just things that worked for me, is one, I never look at my social media metrics. I never look at how many likes a picture got or how many comments or anything like that. I've even had brands reach out sometimes and ask me, and I'm like, I have no idea. It's a fun place for me to share my journey. It's not about that for me. So I just don't even look. I know it's there, but it's not something that I look at, and you don't have to. But that has just helped it, social media stay fun for me. Another thing that I do is I don't have, most of the time, I don't have notifications turned on for social media on my phone, push notifications. And so that way I have to deliberately set time to go into social media and okay, I'm going to have my Instagram time, catch up with my friends, my community on Instagram, and a lot of times I'll set a time limit for that, and then I'll get off. And I might have a couple different times in the day that I do that for 30 minutes or so. But that kind of helps me not get sucked in constantly and have it be something that's taking tons of my time away from real life and training and work and mom life. So that is, those are just some things that have worked for me. And yeah, I look forward to hearing what other people have to say on this topic too, because I know it's a big one. So thanks, Andy and Zach, for bringing this conversation about.
Thank you to Jamal and Ann for those important insights. The people on the other end of the screen are people, and I think
Some of them.
Most of them. There might be a few bots thrown in there, but I've really appreciated, specifically about Ann and Jamal, and why I reached out to them is because I have felt that they view me as a person. Like, they're connecting with me as a person. They want to get to know me. And so what they've done is they have created authentic connections and community on their social media platforms. And I think that's the important thing. Like, social media may have all these things going on with it. We may be hunching and on, but there are real, wonderful people that we can connect to all over the globe. And we can have meaningful dialogue about how training fits into a thriving life. So thank you, Ann and Jamal, for creating those kinds of spaces. Now, I did want to note that both Ann and Jamal both mentioned putting a time limit on social media, and I think this is imperative to having a healthy relationship with social media. I found that to be true for me as well.
Especially important if that time limit is measured in seconds.
I can't do it in seconds, Zach. I'm sorry.
Well,
yeah.
I tried.
So we had another contributor, very exciting. We had pro runner and previous guest Kendra Chambers, and she wrote me back, was very generous in these profound thoughts. And as we read this, think of how social media affects the pro athlete. She wrote this: I think social media has a lot of different effects on runners in our sport. Some of them are positive and some of them are negative. I will say I know a lot of track athletes have created partnerships, have solidified sponsorships, have obtained free products, and even made substantial income off of social media, which is all great. I also know it's a way for us to connect with our community, with our fans, and with our friends in the sport. On the other hand, as in any other career path, social media can be a place where you can place your identity as an athlete or runner, and often can lose yourself if you're constantly comparing to other athletes or runners online. The thing about social media is that people only highlight the good and hide the bad, so it's not a real representation of somebody's life or running career. It's important that people know when it's time to take a break, and when it's time to step away, or when it's time to seek help in creating safe habits that can help you digest social media in a healthy way. Wow.
Thank you, Dr. Kendra Chambers.
Kendra!
Yeah, good.
That's
good.
such deep, good stuff.
It is. And that is going to, I'm not going to share it yet, but when we share kind of like our take, what does Andy think about social media and what does Zach think about social media, I'm going to harken back to something she said.
Okay.
So then the question becomes, of course, as we've been asking, do you have a healthy, I don't like using the word relationship with social media because
it's not a person.
There
are people that use it that you connect with. You
shouldn't have a relationship with social media. You should be in command of use of social media.
Oh, yeah.
So do you have a healthy command of social media?
That is good, Zach. Thank you.
Done. We can just end right here.
So if social media is an addictive behavior, which we have confirmed that it is, we must also realize the implications it may have on our ability to discern what our command of social media is.
Yeah.
I've been there, folks. So now I'm saying it because I know there's at least a handful of you that are going to hear this and you're going to wonder, like, and you're going to feel a little battle within here. But denial is often the biggest obstacle in getting in our way of healthy boundaries.
And you should know, if you ever disagree with anything we say in this podcast, you're in denial. So just start there.
You guys,
assume. Oh, wait.
I apologize for him.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That's not true.
So the question is, do you have a healthy relationship with social media? You can find out by honestly reflecting on the questions I have in my article on AtoZrunning.com. I'm not going to list them out right now.
Mm-hmm. Go read the article. It's great.
A few of these self-reflections include how you view yourself, the impact on relationships and sports, and your habits.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the self-reflections. I would encourage you to check it out if you're wondering, do I have a healthy command of social media?
There it is. Yep, there it is. So as we've discussed, there are certainly things that we can do to better ensure healthy use of these kinds of things. But I'm curious, Andy, now having thought through all of that, what do you think yourself of social media use?
I think if social media is left unchecked and we don't have command over it, we're just letting it happen to us and we get into that mindless scroll or we find ourselves absorbed, I think it will cause a net negative of influence in our life. Now, if we use social media with moderation and clear intentions and time restrictions, we can enjoy the benefits of connecting with community, friends, learning ideas on social media.
Indeed. Now, let me share 2 quick thoughts from my own perspective. So if I may, I'm going to go back to Jaron Lanier's book for just a moment because it's valuable to think about those who have very strong counter opinions to these kinds of technologies. What is it that is their biggest beef? So Lanier himself, who has very strong opinions against these things, also has made his life's fortune in the technology space, and he's very pro-technology in a general kind of sense. Like they say he might be kind of like one of the original designers of virtual reality. And I say might because those ideas came from a lot of directions at once, but he certainly is one of the chief forces behind that, among other things. So like he's one of those people who's helped make technology what it is today. And continues to. But here are 2 quick considerations. And the main thought behind Jaron Lanier's book that, the 10 arguments to cancel everything right now, he writes, the problem is not only that users are crammed into online environments that can bring out the worst in us, it's not only that so much power has concentrated into a tiny number of hands that control giant cloud computers. The problem occurs when all the phenomena I've just described are driven by a business model in which the incentive is to find customers ready to pay to modify someone else's behavior. Customers being the advertisers, right? The people who are trying to get their product in front of you are paying Facebook, Google, et cetera, to get enough information so that they can change our behaviors. And then he goes on to write, now companies are measuring whether individuals changed their behaviors, and the feeds for each person are therefore constantly tweaked to get individual behavior to change. Your specific behavior change has been turned into a product. So here's the stuff. He starts to break down things, and he talks about how like they know, and this is actually not like it's not something Google and Facebook are tracking. Just any website can do this if they want to. They can track where your mouse is on a page and how long it's moving around. If you scroll on a phone, they know how long you've sat.
They do it by hotspots. I've actually seen it before.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have it on our website. We just don't use it because we don't pay any attention to it. But anyway, it's a very common technology. So, and they can see like in a mobile thing, they can see how long your screen has been sitting in a certain spot. So if you like scrolling and you pause, boom, they know that. So like all of that kind of stuff, they are trying to basically say, can I get you to pause at the right spot, to click at the right spot? And if I can get you to do that, that's worth gold, because not only can they get you to do it once, they can start developing patterns and get you to do it over and over and over. So Lanier's concern becomes their chief goal is to get you to spend as much time as possible in their service doing the things they want you to do to make them money. So their goal has nothing to do with all these goods that we've just discussed, like community and connection and all this. And you can say all sorts of things about like, Mark Zuckerberg, like he had this grand vision of people are going to be able to connect with each other and such. Maybe, maybe not. But the point is the design behind the system, the algorithms are built for behavior change. And it has no concern whatsoever with whether those things are positive, which breeds a consequence Lanier writes about extensively, which is that the negative emotions are the most profitable ones. So they do intentionally direct negative elements into people's attention.
Wow.
Because it tends to produce the greatest chance of behavior change. So all of that. Now, let me state my opinion in very clear terms, which is not nearly as black and white as you were about to think it was. First, if your social media is like general social media use, stop. Delete it all. Get rid of everything. Except task-focused, intentional, like I'm on Twitter because I'm a teacher and I'm following teacher tags to learn about certain types of things. I'm on Instagram, in Kendra Chambers' words, because I am branding myself as an athlete to support products and sponsors, and I'm trying to connect with other athletes in this kind of way. I'm on Strava because my coach says it would be helpful if you're on Strava so that we can interact with our athletes and things like that. And so then what I do is I decide what is the reason I'm using this technology, and then what does it look like to do that in a healthy way to a healthy degree, and only do those things. And by the way, Lanier begins by saying, if you're not going to delete all your social media stuff, at least turn off all the notifications.
That's what Anne said.
Kill all notifications, and Anne did say. So as Kendra was noting in her comments as well, that we need the unchecked principle that Andy mentioned, we need to be aware of these things. So what I have to do is I have to find out how can I engage with these things in a way that accomplishes my purpose, my task, but does not lend myself and all my attentions to the people who are advertising their stuff to me.
And I think that's why I really enjoyed getting to know, I have enjoyed getting to know Jamal and Anne, is because they have inserted their will on social media platform to encourage, to learn. They intentionally, like Jamal creating the coffee posse, he's intentionally using the platform to have a positive atmosphere among the running community. Anne, she'll comment these just such nice encouragement, authentic encouragement. She goes on and she does this intentionally. She goes on for that purpose. She's like, I'm going to encourage people today. And so if we can go on the platforms with that same sort of command that Zach said earlier, then we can wreak havoc on the business model system, and we can get the most out of social media that we want, but we just have to be intentional and realize the potential effects.
That is the stuff right there. So in doing that, then we ask ourselves, how long does it take to accomplish that task? Do I need an hour a day to accomplish that task, or 10 minutes a day? And of course, what are the other things on that social media platform that are attracting my attention but are not part of that task? Do not do them. Ever. So obviously that's a strong, but these are the ways that I can say to myself, what is it that I need from this thing? How is this going to be a benefit to me? And only focusing in those kinds of capacities. Because remember, and Facebook is the chief among them of this, they have a great many different ways to attract our attention from a great many different angles. And all they have to do with the algorithm is figure out the one that has the greatest likelihood of bringing me into their interest.
Oh, I know what mine is.
All it is.
Want to know what mine is? Facial products.
Oh, goodness.
They're always advertising facial products.
That explains why you've purchased so many different kinds of
it works then.
facial products. Well, by the way, and I just want to bring this up only because Andy just mentioned that. So one of the chief things that the algorithm does effectively is not that they're just advertising to Andy constantly about facial products. It's that they're finding posts from other users that are going to connect with a person who's likely to buy a facial product, and they're making sure Andy sees them more. Like this is crazy level statistical algorithmic types of stuff that they're capable of doing. And all it simply is we know how to get you to be where we want you to be, and do we want what we want you to do.
Interesting.
And it's not a question of whether they can do it. They can do it because they're wildly successful. So don't let them. That's it.
That's it. Well, we have more on the topic again at AtoZrunning.com, so make sure you check that out. I'll link to it, but you can also really easily find it. It's right next to this article that is the blog post with the episode. So now on.
So let's get on to the world of running.
First off, we're talking indoor track, starting with our A to Z runner, Aaron, who just ran a 5K indoors at GVSU, and it was super speedy.
Very fast. We're going to call you Fast Aaron.
Fast Aaron.
And that's probably a great way to say, like, a lot of good, fast indoor trackness happening. So Aaron inspired us with her performance, and then not long after that, things started falling apart, like in a good way. All right, first up, we're going to talk about the David Henry Valentine Invitational. This is the BU Invite. It's major. It happens every year. It's not always the same name. But the BU Invitational is like one of the chief indoor meets in the world. Absolutely. And this one just rewrote the landscape.
Like, I think it was on fire.
Well, people were.
I
Yeah, okay, so Andy, start with the women's 5,000, which was one of the first events that lit everything on fire.
Yes. So all eyes were on Gabriella Dupuis-Stafford this week.
Of Canada. Yeah.
Of Canada, because last week she ran the 3,000 indoor Canadian record.
Yeah.
So everyone was anticipating that she was going for this 5,000 meter record attempt. And so I'll have a link to the race so that you can watch it, and you'll hear the announcers are talking mostly about Gabriella,
and the Canadian record.
And the Canadian record.
Let alone that wasn't the only thing they should have been thinking about.
So the race was led by a rabbit with a clear top three early on, which was Courtney Frerichs, Elise Cranny, and then Gabriella.
Bowerman Track Club teammates.
Bowerman Track Club.
All
so
three.
they worked together once the rabbit had dropped, and they took turns leading. Elise Cranny was the first of the group to make a significant move with 800 meters to go.
Gapping
She gapped.
Dupuis-Stafford quite a bit initially.
Right. Initially. That's the key word there, because Gabriella reeled her back in the last 400 and closed in her last 200 in a 30.81.
Oh. That's for those of you thinking in
fast.
400-meter things, that's a 61-second 400 pace. That's that kind of pace. Yeah. Okay, well, she did that, but she didn't just do that to win the race.
Right. So not only did she win and get a new Canadian record, like crush that, but she also broke the North American record held by Shailene Flanagan, who held the record previously in a time of 14:47.62. Gabriella ran 14:31.38 to chomp about 16 seconds off the record.
I'd be very interested to know how long a United States athlete has held the North American record versus Canadian. I'm not quite sure. I know that it's been in the U.S.'s hands for quite some time, but not anymore.
Not anymore.
Although narrowly.
Yeah. Elise Cranny's bold move was rewarded with a second place finish and a shiny indoor 5,000 meter American record of 14:33.17.
So she knocked 14 seconds off Shailene's record. And by the way, Shailene being one of the coaches of Bowerman Track Club,
she was there
was kind
cheering
of
on.
Exciting.
Yeah. And behind them was an impressive PR from steeplechase Olympic silver medalist and previous guest Courtney Frerichs, setting a new personal best of 14:48.75. So notice the time is less than 2 seconds shy of Shailene's previous record.
Yeah, less than 1 second or about 1 second. Okay, so that's important because
less than 2 seconds.
Right, yes.
So just over a second.
Very nearly over a second. Okay, so you see here that Courtney Frerich's performance would have been like just this crazy thing.
Yeah.
If not for the fact that two more in front of her.
Exactly. And she's a steeplechase runner, guys.
Yeah, and that's just great. It was amazing. Yeah. Nobody runs that fast indoors. It just rarely ever happens.
Right. Especially when that's not her specialty. Like,
right.
She didn't. Yes. She could have gone to, she's one of those runners who could make attempts in the flat races for some of these events. And I listened to a podcast with her, and I know that this has been a goal for her to show that she can do the 5,000 at this level.
Goal achieved.
Goal achieved.
So we've got a video if you want to watch it, because of course you do.
Yeah,
and you can go to AtoZrunning.com to see that. Now for the men's 5,000, first I got to just say the women's race kind of like set the tone, and then the men's race, just like people get done watching this one and they're just like, I don't even know what just happened. But now I have to recategorize.
They didn't even know the North American record was beaten, and that Elise Cranny got the not right away, and that Elise Cranny got the American record. They didn't know.
And if people were in awe, what ends up happening in the men's race is now they just start getting confused, because it's like these things can't be possible, right? So in the men's race, Grant Fisher won the race. Bowerman Track Club. By the way, Bowerman Track Club.
You said that
just
like so nonchalant.
Showed everybody stuff. No, because what's not so nonchalant is how fast he ran. Grant Fisher ran 12 12:53.7 in a 5,000 indoors. Not only a new American record by 12 seconds. By 8 seconds. Not only a new American record by 8 seconds, but the 5th fastest all-time indoors 5,000 meter.
In the world.
We're talking about faster than Eliud Kipchoge ever ran indoors. We're talking about faster
On the
than
globe.
nearly every athlete ever.
In history.
Grant Fisher.
Grant Fisher.
What in the world?
You know he grew up in
So-
Michigan, so I always like to throw that out there.
Yes. So 8 seconds off of Galen Rupp's indoor 5,000 meter record. He only ran 1/10 of a second off of Bernard Lagat's all-time, like outdoor and indoor, 5,000 meter American record. 1/10 of a second. And nobody runs that fast indoors historically.
Amazing.
Apparently now they do.
Yeah.
So yes, all those things are great. But that was only one of the people in the
Wait,
race.
there's
so
more.
then in second place, Mohamed, also of Bowerman Track Club, but Canadian, was, if you recall, the Olympic silver medalist this past Olympics. So ran second place, ran 12:56 to break his own Canadian indoor record and also to enter into top 6 or 7 all-time indoors. Okay. Now those guys are teammates. So you're like, wow, they're on the same team and they're two of the best in history. Well, no, because the third one is also on the same team and ran. So then Mark Scott of Great Britain finishes third to then run a British national record as well as a full-on European indoor 5,000 meter national record. He ran 12:57, which knocked off another 11 seconds off of the British or the European record, not just the British, European record. And a quote from Let's Run here. In the process, Scott became the first man born in the UK and just the third born in Europe to break 13 minutes in the 5K. Indoors or outdoors. So that's crazy. And by the way, this is the first time 3 people have run under 13 minutes indoors in one race ever.
I mean, that's a hot race.
And they're on the same team, people.
It's absolutely incredible.
Whoa. Okay,
and
but
we do want to note some more
Yes.
amazing performances within this same race.
It didn't even stop there. So Emmanuel Bohr of the United States, second fastest in U.S. indoor history behind Grant Fisher's time, would have broken Galen Rupp's previous American record.
Would have broken
he was
it.
fourth in the race and not
Right.
first. He ran 13 flat.
That's so fast.
Sam Atkin of Great Britain and Jonas Reyes of Switzerland both ran faster than that previous European record, except for Mark Scott was ahead of them, and settling for 5th in 13:03 for Atkin and 6th for Reyes in 13:07. So, okay, that's great. But wait, Florida State's Adrian Wildscott, I never know how to say his name, but he's South African, ran the second fastest NCAA time indoors ever to finish in, what was he like? He was in the B heat in 5th place, but he ran 13:09,
What?
which is a national South African record.
That's so fast, too.
And by the
in
way-
a B heat, I just can't even wrap my mind around that.
By the way, Woody Kincaid, also of Bowerman Track Club, ran in the B heat, not in the fast heat, because Jerry Schumacher, his coach, said, I don't think he's ready for the fast heat this time around. Like, he's just not quite there in training. So he runs him in the B heat. He wins it in 13:05.
Oh, wow.
Which would have been like the second fastest American indoor time or 4th or something like that, except for that, those guys in front of him now set him back. I think it would have been second.
Okay.
But anyway,
Okay.
so yeah, and he was, quote, not ready, and he ran 13:05. I don't even know what to think about this, but that's not all the fast stuff happening that day.
Women's 800, we're going to talk about some youngsters that we've mentioned on the show before. Roisin Willis claimed a new high school American record in the 800 and won overall in this stacked women's heat, running 2 minutes 0.06. Pretty much 2 minutes flat. And then she took a second off of the previous record, which was 2:01 by Sammy
Nice.
Wesson. Yeah, and rival.
She's still in high school? Roisin is still in high school? Man,
I know, she's
she's
17.
just been fast for so long.
Rival teen superstar Sophia Goridian. Is that how you say it?
Goriaran?
Goriaran, sorry, Sophia. She also ran under the previous record in a blazing time of 2:58. So
Wow.
only 0.4 from Roisin there. So
this is like the story of I would have gotten the record if someone in front of me didn't get the
I know
record.
that's like the story of this whole meet.
Oh goodness. Well, in the men's 3,000, that wasn't
This is
quite
different.
the story.
No, this is a solo effort.
This was a near miss. No, it was almost a near miss solo effort. So Yared Nagoos, whom we've discussed in plenty because he broke the NCAA 1,500 meter record last year. He's like a 2-time NCAA champ. He's still got another year, I think it is, at Notre Dame, and he broke the NCAA 3,000 meter record by like a tenth of a second. Ran 7:38, which, by the way, and this is probably the most impressive of all of the records in the sense of what he broke, because Alistair Craig held that record for 18 years.
Really
that means
impressive.
the likes of Galen Rupp couldn't break that. Grant Fisher, when he was in college, he wasn't running those times, and he's running crazy fast now. So like, that's really good.
It is, and he did it solo. I mean, he did have a pacer for a bit, but like he
But they
had
couldn't
to
hack
run
it,
it out
so
at
he
the
just
end.
oh man.
So having your mind in the right space to be able to do that solo, that's so much different than these other really close finishes that we have been mentioning throughout this episode so far.
Let's further contextualize it as well, because he also had COVID the week of the race.
No, the week before.
Well, I mean, he tested positive the week before, which means he was dealing with it.
Yeah.
So to the point where literally he was not allowed to fly on a plane until the day of the race. So he flew in the morning of the race.
Yeah, he had to have also a clear COVID test.
Right.
To compete.
So it's like,
because I think it was probably not all the date. I don't know.
Well, I mean, who knows what the story is on the exactness. Thankfully, he didn't share that because he shouldn't have. We don't need to know that. But what we know is that, I mean, the dude had a respiratory virus and still did that days out of recovery. So that's good. And they did ask him, did it interrupt your training? And he kind of was like, it was mild. So it wasn't a bad case, which is good.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you want to watch that race as well, we've got videos to a number of these. We're linking to the articles so you can follow up a little bit more. There's just so much entertainment in watching people do incredible things.
If you need something for your treadmill runs, this stuff might fire you up.
That's the truth.
Just make sure you don't crank up your speed too much.
Now, if we can at least touch on a couple of other, because that was amazing at the BU invite, but there was a lot more happening. And so one example here, I was on a treadmill at the YMCA and noticed, hey, there's something interesting happening on the TV over there in a track meet that they were streaming. And I glanced at it and I was like, the American Track League? I don't even know what meet that is. But I saw a couple splits show up on the screen of what a guy was running, and I was like, that's really fast. What is it? What's going on here? Well, as it turns out, Shane Strike of Atlanta Track Club just broke the U.S. 1,000 meter record on the indoor track. So 1,000, that's not a terribly common distance. So many call that a softer record, I guess you could say. But it was set by an Olympian, recent Olympian. He just set it recently. So it's not like slow people are running that time. No. He ran 2:16, which, he came through the 800 meters in like 1:47, 1:48. So that's very fast. And then he kept going. So that's really good. But here's what's really interesting about this Shane Strike guy. So he was recently out of college, and he actually spent 5 years at a Big Ten school where he never finished better than 4th in the conference championships, never made it to regionals, never made it to, maybe regionals, never made it to nationals. And then he had a 6th year of eligibility, red shirts and all that stuff. So he spent his 6th year seeing some significant improvement, ended up making it to the NCAA Outdoor National Championships. So clearly has been on the rise more recently, but still just kind of slowly emerging after college here, and then boom. And he even talked about I knew I was fit enough to do that, but it doesn't make it any less awesome when it happens.
Right.
So cool. All right, so that was that. But then in second place in the race, remember I said there's a lot of this happening. Luke McCann also broke the Irish national record for the 1,000 meters in a time of 2:17. He was only a second behind, and it marked a 10-second personal best for him.
10 seconds.
Probably because he just didn't run that event very often. That tends to be the thing with this.
But 10 seconds is still a lot.
But there you have it.
In that distance.
Still, and 2 national records.
2 national records.
In one event.
It's fantastic.
Wow. Okay, one more for you. This was another kind of like a smaller event, you could say, but no small things happening. Cooper Tier and Cole Hocker, previously Oregon teammates. If you recall, those are the two that kind of like dueled it out. And both of them went pro after the Olympics, running for Nike. And so they're kind of like still teammates. But they decided they were going to together attempt Bernard Lagat's indoor 1 mile record. And you should know that last year, as Oregon teammates, they ran within a second of it together. So, like, this is actually their second time, you could say, doing this, which is really kind of cool. It's like the repeat, but they missed it. Only narrowly, though.
Narrowly,
And
yes.
both ran PRs, like by tenths. And so it's one of those things where it's like they improved on their attempt last time, but it's still not quite
Just
there.
tenths away.
And I got to say, a lot of people have attempted Lagat's indoor mile record.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people. Good, fast people. And it's not hard, or it's not easy to do. So they went
guys.
for it. They ran 350.1 for Tier, who is kind of on a rampage here, beating Cole Hocker, especially at Cole Hocker's own game, because Hocker's the miler, you could say, and Tier's more like a 5K guy. But
I don't know
anyway.
if you could say that.
Yeah, not right now, because Tier's got better
you can't
PRs
say
than
that.
all of it than him. Okay, so
They make you
and
eat
Cole
your
Hocker was
words.
2 tenths behind. I mean, it was right there. However, they weren't alone in this attempt, because it kind of like in a surprise endeavor, Michigan State University's Morgan Beadlescombe ran an astounding 9-second PR in the mile to run 3:52, which is 4th all time for the NCAA. Keeping in mind that 1st and 2nd are Cooper Tier and Cole Hocker. And so there's one other person historically who's ever
company.
run faster.
Yeah.
And that was just like, wait, is he still in the race? Wait, is he still in the race? Like, what? Beadlescombe's like, he's running really well. He's still running really well. And then he, like, at one point, he's like pushing the pace, and it's like, whoa. Okay, so you got to watch it.
Yeah.
Because we linked the video. And that's probably enough for now.
It's never enough. That's why we do it every week. It's because it's never enough.
In case you want more, just
Subscribe.
head to AtoZrunning.com. Click the word follow, because then you won't miss any of the amazing stuff. We're publishing articles, we're sharing insights within the podcast and without. And of course, if there are other ways that we can be valuable to you, like we get some discounts or promo codes on things, we keep that live in these digests that we send monthly as well. So you never have to miss an opportunity for a great discount, among many other great perks.
Well, we want to thank you for joining us today. We want to thank you for bringing positivity to the social media space. Thank you for your questions, your comments, for connecting with us. And we appreciate it. We don't take it for granted. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.